When I think about, the HIV and AIDS epidemic, and when I think about the pandemic that we're experiencing, now, I do see parallels of like where people try to say, you know what, this is not real, or try to say, you know what, we're not going to give this as much attention. Or I noticed that it also hits communities that are marginalized, and I always say that and I cringe a little bit inside because I don't think there's anything marginal about me as a black man, as a gay man, and so I hate sometimes that we have to put ourselves in this marginal community. I'm like, I'm not marginal at all. We are exceptional because of these things, and unfortunately sometimes those exceptional communities are told that you don't get the resources, you don't get what everyone else is getting, and so we have to figure out a new way to fight. When I think back about when I first started hearing about HIV and AIDS, it would have to be early, but it was always through fear, always. I grew up in a household where my family are immigrants, they're Jamaican and Cuban, and so that's a culture that's very machismo and very, masculine driven, and they have a lot of those toxic male behaviors that they subscribe to and they pass on. And so living in that household, in those communities, when they would talk about homosexuality, the conversation was always homosexuality and AIDS. And those were synonymous. It was like, if any person is a member of the LGBT community, most likely they also have AIDS. Or if a person was to come out and express their sexuality, then they're going to get AIDS. And so that was always what I heard from my earliest memories of, 6, 7. You know what I mean? Especially like when I'm thinking about the Caribbean side of my family, the Jamaican side, the music that I heard in my household growing up always informed me that gay men were going to die either from violence from someone in the community or from this disease that, to me, I didn't understand. All I know was the words. I saw it on television. I saw what was being told to my family, and it was always, this is bad, this is fearful, be afraid. Just know if this ever happens to you, you're dead. They manipulated people into being fearful, and being fearful of not only the disease, but also being fearful of people. I just remember people being in sitcoms and things of like, someone had, you find out someone had HIV or had AIDS, and all of a sudden they all backed up. And everyone was like, oh, no, no. I just watched an episode the other day of one of my favorite shows, because it's back on television now, called Girlfriends. And this is in the early 2000s, so this is not even the 80s or 90s when I was a kid. And I remember in this episode, one of the women had found out that she was HIV positive. Or I think on the show, they kept saying she had AIDS. And I remember she was cutting vegetables, and she cut herself. And literally, the reaction of the cast was to throw away everything. It was like, throw away the knife, throw away, the cutting board, throw away everything, because there was so much miseducation. And they did their best in the episode to sort of get to the point where it was like, we shouldn't be this way. But I think growing up, every image I had on television, especially in the 80s and 90s, was similar to that. If you come around someone, burn the whole house down because AIDS is here. And it was like, no, that's not the appropriate approach. Being a gay black man and knowing that this disease was out there was terrifying because, I started to let people into my life regarding my sexuality and was very open at the age of 15. And then I moved to college at a historically black college and university. And so you really heard it. It was like black women, black gay men, those are the people who are infected the most. So in my mind, that's my friends, that's my girlfriends, and that's me. And so it was scary because you then are already dealing with, finding the courage and confidence to be your authentic self, but then it also blocks you from wanting to have intimate moments because you're like, well, if I have an intimate moment, will this lead to my death? And it wasn't until, to be honest with you, I saw Pedro Zamora on The Real World that blew my mind. It was like the first time I saw a Latino man who was in a committed relationship with an African-American man, and they were loving and confident and so proud of themselves and didn't allow Pedro's diagnosis to stop them from living and from succeeding and from engaging in life. And it was a very special moment for me being, I think I was like 20 or 19 or 18 and was just coming out of, high school and going to college when I saw that. And it's actually one of the reasons that I then applied for MTV's Real World later was because I was thinking, if this man could have this courage to be authentic and truthful on television, and I had never seen a gay black man on that show do that, other than his partner, who was not a castmate. I was like, well, let me go on there and do it. And, it was because of his courage with how he talked about his diagnosis that just made me so proud to be to be black, but also to have Latino heritage. It just was a very beautiful moment. The first person that I ever came across with who was HIV positive was when I was in college. I was 19 years old, and there was a group of guys that we hung around with and we were going to the club with, and one of them shared that they couldn't have a cocktail at the bar because the medication they were on, it countered it. And I remember being so confused because the images I had seen before that, other than Pedro, were always people withering away and dying. And here was this vibrant, sexy, gorgeous, 20-year-old, 22-year-old that was saying, I'm HIV positive and I can't drink right now. And it was sort of like, okay, hold on. This is the message and the images I'm seeing on television, and I'm looking at you, and brother, you are fine and gorgeous and healthy. Which one is which? And it was the first time I had to challenge myself of like, hold on. Maybe the images we're getting about how people can live when they are HIV positive is wrong. At that point, immediately, it then became something for me where I was like, anytime I would hear people talk about someone who was HIV positive, I would then step up and I would use this friend as a reference point of like, no, that ain't true, because my friend is fine and in school and is looking good and he's not whatever you're saying. And then it also helped me to feel more comfortable about dating people who are HIV positive, because it was like, why wouldn't I? If someone is going to the doctor regularly, checking on their diet, checking on their mental health, their physical health, boo, you got it together. Like, that's sexy. And like, I think we got this skewed mentality in our community of like, that somehow that's like something to stay away from. That's the ones you need to run to. You over here looking at the guy who is not taking care of his mental health. He might go to the gym, but like, he ain't focusing on his body and his mind. The person who is HIV positive, who is regularly seeing their doctor, who's making sure they're working on their mental health, who's being confident, that's the healthy person you need to go run to.